Hi people, welcome to Bluuk Jazz Dancer in the Blue Lab. I want to share an insight into my Rebirth of the Cool Volume 1 project. It's giving people insight into behind the scenes of UK jazz dance. Basically, I, as a dancer and the longest dancer in the history of Manchester, I've been on most scenes that there was upper north, south, east and west of the UK. I boycotted certain key venues because of Black Door policy. That's what you need to understand. I was very politicised as a dance artist, a UK jazz dance pioneer, and people got that as an individual. I was born in 1964, so I come from the 60s crowd. The people that innovated this art form were around 48 Windrush period, do you know what I'm saying? Individuals, 50s and 60s, children, the ones who innovated this art form. It is unique, and it happened through unique circumstances that took place during the war, post the war, pre the war. There was a lot of experimental jazz dance going on, a lot of experimental ballet dance going on, a lot of experimental dance in general. Have you got that? So what happened, for example, in 48, what happened, other things, 46, Ballynagh, the Caribbean dancers came to Britain, toured Britain. 48, Dunham came. 1945, there was Pan-African Congress movement, which was people fought for the end of colonialisation. A lot of key activities took place around dance and music, around protests, around celebration, around bringing people together. People got that. 48, Dunham, Catherine Dunham came here and toured Britain, and she stayed here for long extended tours, north, south, east and west of Britain. Nicholas Brothers came here. Manchester was one of the leading places for entertainment in the world. Have you got that? It's important for people to understand. Reconstruction started to take place. First time, what happened in 1948, the first black professor, Arthur Lewis, of economics came to Manchester University. Do you understand? Manchester was a leading university and in the world, in industries, in sense of Manchester, particularly during the war, advanced its technology because of the war effort. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Right, so it's important for people to understand. So I'm giving you an understanding behind the scenes, Rebirth of the Cool, that one, dance doesn't happen in a vacuum. And what happens has been UK jazz dance has been misrepresented from the beginning because the people who've led it are not dance educators. So they're unaware to the fact that dance doesn't happen in a vacuum. So they've not given you what was happening around the dance socially, physically, intellectually, culturally, emotionally, spiritually, politically, economically, technologically, environment, legally. They never gave you what happened. We've had more a city centre focus where blacks were not dominant in the city centres as DJs. It's been dominated by Western DJs who don't dance, who don't live in the heart of our community, know nothing about the dance culture. Have you got this? Very, very important. Most importantly, what I want to give people an understanding, I never knew of Colin Curtis first. Some of the leading DJs, I never knew of them because the community was insulated away from white society. You have to understand. And them insulated from us. It's only through UK jazz dance being expanded into the city centre that we found them. Do you understand? And voluntarily followed these DJs. They didn't come into the heart of our community and say, come to our venues. They didn't want us at their venues because black music was loved by the mass population of people. Yeah, from a long time ago, particularly after the war. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Right. So my work is giving people behind the scenes understanding of the culture inside of our homes. Coming from my personal perspective as the longest dancer in Manchester. Do you understand? And then us gravitating to the cities. Our parents are the ones in the vintage clothes. Our parents were the ones who bought obscure jazz music first. Do you understand? Our parents made jazz cool to dance to. Our parents made vintage dress cool. Our parents made it important to be politically aware about jazz. Yeah? Jazz musicians from around the world came here from 1946 to 1972. Manchester had a prolific modern jazz scene. And what happened was they were involved in key clubs, Reno to Flamenco, Reno, Manchester to Flamenco Club in London. The leading person to run that club or to be an opening act was from Manchester, which was Georgie Fame. And people need to understand Manchester constantly gravitated to bring the best musicians here. There was a touring route between north, south, and east and west, the Midlands and London for jazz. Manchester progressively brought deep artists, nurtured artists and created artists, musicians to come to the city because they knew the best musicians would meet here for jam sessions. Have you got that? And then them musicians were then actually asked to perform in London. Have you got that? It's important that you understand. We have always influenced London, the north of England. Constantly have always influenced it because we were the first modern city, the first industrial revolution in the world, industrial centre of the world was Manchester. We bring in new modern technology, new modern living came from here. Always from that time, we have influenced London and we've influenced the Midlands. Have you got that? And influenced the world. It's important for people to understand. Because what's happened, you're going to hear me talk Rebirth for the Cool from a real talk perspective. London, because of the rivalry, always tried to diminish Manchester's contribution to the city. So I'm one dancer who's contributed to that city since the 80s. 99% of my contribution in video, in film, in memorabilia is hidden. That is just a normal exercise what London has done to northern artists. They wipe them out, wipe their history out, so nobody knows about it. Do you understand? In sense of the rivalry. It's important people understand what I'm saying here today. So I'm giving you behind the scenes understanding of the culture. You're in my lab. This is the first time you'll have seen a lab, yeah, from a dancer. But in Manchester, people had labs, and that goes back to the Industrial Revolution. Constantly, what happened, I wanted to be in the RAF, I wanted to be an RAF pilot, I was learning about engines, I was doing courses at college, learning mechanical engineering. My friends had lathes in Manchester, in Old Trafford particularly. You'll find a lot of the young people, their parents worked in the industrial areas of electronics. There were carpenters and all that. They had, in their homes, they had labs where they nurtured their children. Have you got that? A lot of my friends' parents were in management of engineering, managers of carpentry firms, management in haberdashery, all sorts of things. You could upholstery, etc. My friends, the school I went to, St. Mary's, was an exceptional school for the next apprentices into doing engineering, electronics, architecture, all that. That's the school I went to. It was a very prestigious school. Have you got that? And everybody had a lab. That's as simple as it is. Have you got that? Particularly from 1950. 1950 was like DIY. So people had their garages. So in my area, everybody's got a garage near enough. So people had garages where they're made into labs. Do you understand? Some people changed their places into dance spaces, etc. I use my bedroom. Other people use their bedroom. And then outside we use as a lab. We had a back garden and we had a front garden. And I used them for certain activities I want to do to train myself, etc. Have people got this? So I'm giving you behind the scenes understanding that what happens is, as an individual, I'm the first one who's going to give you an understanding about dance from an educational perspective. Now, what is dance education? Dance education was created to basically bring about personal development for any child, any adult that involved himself from a dance educational perspective. What's happened has been UK jazz dance has been led by commercial interests, and commercial industries bastardized the history. It never gave a true history. It was like people just learning the history, etc., etc. And what happened, rivalry took place. Rivalry took place within that industry. Do you understand? Yeah? So people lied so people wouldn't know about other people. So what happened, if a person was doing a workshop, they're going to tell you about another person who does something similar to them from an educational perspective. There was no dance school, if you understand what I'm saying. It was independence. And because independence had to survive, some of the things that they did weren't coming from an educational focus. It was about themselves and only about themselves also. They hid videos of the work that they did themselves so nobody would know. What's happened has been, it bastardized the education. So what happened is many dancers who've learned UK jazz dances have not learnt it the authentic way. We never had a class. Never. You need to understand this in this room. And what's happening is, new generation of dancers are coming through, can't improvise themselves. I know because I've tested them. Okay, you've learnt my dance. My dance, first of all, is an improvisational art form. What knowledge, experience and skills do you need and traits do you need to be an improvisational dancer? You have to be free as a bird. You have to be free-spirited in your own movement, because the whole idea of UK jazz dance from the beginning was for you to develop your own style. reflecting your own personality and character. That is not being taught. What happened has been rote learning has been taught. So individuals, we talk about individuals are not graduated in learning UK jazz dance. All they're doing is mimicking a style back to me. Yeah, I know that style because I can do that style also. Okay, yeah, I can mimic, but what is you in that style? That is what's happened at the moment. So what happened from a long time ago, I started to teach from a long time ago, from 1978. Amazing story. Before that, 1972, I've been dancing to jazz since I've been a child. And one of the key factors in regards to UK jazz dance, the total 100% misrepresentation. People, DJs, Western DJs tried to identify, we started to dance to jazz when they started to play vinyl. That's a lie and a big fabrication. We started to dance to jazz in our mother's wombs. Those who were born in 48 or came around in 48, 50s and 60s were dancing to jazz in the early learning years. And what happened, they really need to understand jazz and derivative jazz music, because music was driven by jazz. Do you understand? It's important for people to understand what I'm saying in this room. And the reason that has happened because Western writers and journalists have been the key writers on our culture, spreading around the world. When they started playing vinyl, that's when we started to dance to jazz. Not realizing, wait, hold on, we have a culture, we have a heritage. We invented this music, particularly to do with African Caribbeans, to do with West Indians. We invented this music. You need to understand, and you need to know our heritage. And it's an insult to me, it's an insult to my ancestors. When I heard a book had come out in 2009, and the reports were, well, when we started to dance to, when Western DJs started to play vinyl, that is when black youth got an education in jazz. I thought that is so insulting, I can't tell nobody. Considering my father was born in Jamaica in 1935, mum was in Grenada, born in Grenada 42. But my dad went to America, lived there and worked there from 55 to 61 in one of the worst periods of time to do with racism that could happen in America. Do you understand? My father was there, he danced to jazz there as an individual. I studied under a gentleman called Thomas Alajide Ojueso, was born in 1888. He told me about jazz. He died at 103 in my hands. I studied under him from 84 to 1991. He told me about jazz. I studied with Frank Manning and Norma Miller, people of swing people from the Savoy. It insults them and insults us as an individual. And so what I've come back is as a great leader, what they call great leadership. Great leadership means I don't follow status quo. Great leadership, I talk real talk. What's happened has been, there's been a status quo history and nobody's challenged it. One person's challenged it, which has been Seymour Nurse from London. And I respect him highly for doing that. Other people, dancers, have not challenged it because they work with the Western DJs, yeah, and they don't want to upset them. Well, I'm going to upset them because I upset you because you've colluded with knowing the fact that what happened, miseducation was spread the world. Do you understand? And spread the world because you have not stood up and recognized, stood up for us and stood up and said miseducation's taking place. These are not the true facts. Yeah? Our parents were the ones who brought vintage clothes to Britain. You have to understand, the best artists in the world came to Britain. The most elitist artists in the world came to Britain in the 1930s. You have to understand, even in the 1900s, came to Britain, okay? And the 1800s, and left their mark in the way that they dress, the way they socialize, the way they left their political understanding, legal understanding in this world. And it's not been identified, you understand? My work is to redress this fact, redress the misrepresentation, redress the lack of equality, the lack of diversity, the lack of respect that has been shown to UK jazz dancers, to identify we were treated, sorry to say, like nigger wogs and coons, is important for me to say. Colonial images have been portrayed, particularly through the film Absolute Beginners. Absolute Beginners should be ashamed because they belittled UK jazz dance best artists, and they belittled the situation, the 1958 riots, race riots that happened in Britain. They debased it. They belittled it. So what happened was nobody wanted anything to do with this, with the film or even the topic. And the film had a responsibility to project us in a positive light and project the 1958 riots in a positive light and did not do so. It was embarrassment. The film was embarrassment to the film industry, British film industry, particularly in 1986 when UK jazz dance had raised itself from the underground into the mainstream world. But it wasn't surprising. That is why I talk about dances happen in a vacuum, because behind the film, from 1830 to up to 86, the black and white minstrel show was making the most money in the world. Do you understand? That was the #1 theatre in Britain, black and white minstrel show on television, 1958 to 1978, and it only came off television, was getting all the awards that you could think of for television. It only came off British TV because of people's complaints, black people's complaints, that you're portraying us in a slavery, from slavery perspective and colonial perspective. You're promoting a negative image of us to the world, and they had done that historically through all the colonies. Are people with me? So Rebirth of the Call is a very, very big project. I said one of the biggest projects I'm going to talk about as an individual, and I talk of it from a personal perspective, bringing video, because what happens is, remember, Manchester was the individual that pioneered, who invented the first computer. Now that's gone to a laptop. Now I'm just using Apple. Do you understand? And it's quite ironic, it's a Mancunian that's coming back with great leadership, because I have self-pride for myself and self-pride for my city, self-pride for my country. I cannot go anywhere in the world and allow people to be teaching me UK jazz dance as a pioneer, telling me about the culture. I said, that's impossible. You're not in this lifetime. I've been to most key venues. I've seen the best dancers there was of my time. Listen to me carefully. I'm like I was at the Savoy Ballroom. It's like I was at the Palladium, okay, in America, when Mambo Jazz came. I was at these places and saw the development of the best dancers and competed against some of the best dancers. Do you understand? Observed the best dancers, spoke to the best dancers, researched the best dancers, where they came from. So one of the key things that's happening, what's disheartens me, has been Snowboy's book in 2009 disheartens me, because he never asked nobody. He had an intention for that book to market not positive things about us as a black people, because he kept out the heritage. If you miss out the heritage, you only perpetuate negative stereotypes from slavery, negative stereotypes from colonializations. That's all you do. You have to have the heritage in, and you have to know how to use the heritage information to what? Break stereotypes, break labeling. Do you understand? You have to be an expert in doing that, and he's not an expert in doing that. He created a film, created a book, because he knew the revival of black Renaissance music was coming, and he knew it's about finance. He says he loves the dancer. He doesn't love the dancer. If he loves the dancer, he would have found me. If he loved the dancers, he would have found academics to give him the heritage knowledge to write his book. How do I know? Because I went to see him myself, and I started to work with him, and he discriminated against me.